Most people think danger sounds loud. Breaking glass, footsteps in the hallway, someone forcing their way through a locked door. But modern horror rarely arrives like that anymore. Now it sounds softer. A notification, a speaker turning on in the middle of the night, a calm artificial voice saying, "Command accepted," even though no one spoke. Welcome to the dark chapter. Tonight's story is about one of the strangest fears of modern life. The moment your own home stops feeling like yours. Not because someone broke in, but because something inside the system started listening back. At first, the apartment felt perfect. Small, clean, modern. The kind of place designed to make life feel frictionless. Voice-controlled lights, smart locks, smart blinds, smart thermostat, security cameras, motion sensors, one speaker connected to everything, all of it controlled by voice. The apartment almost felt alive, and honestly, that was the appeal. You could walk into the kitchen, half asleep, and say, "Turn on the lights," and the room obeyed. You could adjust the temperature without leaving bed, lock the front door from your phone, check security cameras while outside, play music from any room. Convenience, comfort, control. That's what smart homes promise people. The feeling that technology is finally working with you instead of against you. And for the first few weeks, everything worked perfectly, until the apartment started responding to things nobody said. The first incident was small enough to ignore. Around 2:40 in the morning, the bedroom lights suddenly turned on. Not flickering, not glitching. They turned on normally, bright, steady, like someone had calmly given the command. At first, he assumed it was some automatic update, maybe a bug, maybe a faulty routine inside the app. That's the thing about technology. People forgive strange behavior quickly, because systems fail all the time. Apps crash, Wi-Fi disconnects, devices freeze. So when something weird happens once, the brain immediately searches for a harmless explanation. And usually, that explanation is enough, at least in the beginning. A few nights later, it happened again. This time it was the speaker. A soft activation sound echoed through the apartment at exactly 3:12 a.m. Then silence. Then the assistant said, "I'm sorry, I didn't understand that." The problem was simple. No one had spoken. He was alone, completely alone, and yet the system believed it heard a command. That detail sat in his mind longer than it should have, because smart assistants don't activate randomly very often. They wait for trigger words, specific sounds, specific patterns, specific voices. Something had activated it. The question was what? Over the next week, the apartment began behaving differently. Lights turning off in occupied rooms, the thermostat changing temperature by itself, the speaker activating at strange hours. Nothing dramatic, nothing movie-like, just enough to slowly poison the feeling of comfort inside the apartment. And that's what made it effective. Real fear usually builds quietly, one tiny incident at a time, until eventually the atmosphere itself changes. You stop relaxing fully. You stop trusting silence. You stop feeling alone in a good way. And once that shift happens, every small noise begins to feel loaded. Then came the first voice, not from the speaker, from the security system. Late one night, his phone sent a motion detection alert from the living room camera. When he opened the app, the room looked empty. No movement, no intruder, but there was audio, very faint, a voice. At first he thought it was coming from outside, maybe from another apartment, maybe from the street. But after replaying the clip several times, one detail became impossible to ignore. The voice sounded close, too close, like it was inside the room. And even worse, it sounded like someone whispering commands. That's when technology horror becomes different from ordinary horror. Because once devices start hearing things you didn't say, a terrifying possibility appears. Either the system is malfunctioning, or something else is interacting with it. And modern homes are filled with microphones. That's the part people try not to think about. Smart speakers, phones, TVs, doorbells, security systems, tiny listening devices scattered naturally through daily life. People accept them because they make life easier. But comfort has a strange side effect. It lowers suspicion. The more convenient technology becomes, the more invisible it feels, until something reminds you it has been listening the entire. He started checking the activity logs. Every smart home system keeps records, commands, activations, connected devices, timestamps, and at first, the logs only made things more confusing. Because the commands were real, the system truly believed someone had spoken. There were entries showing lights activated by voice, doors checked by voice, temperature adjusted by voice. The commands had timestamps, but there was one detail that made his stomach drop. Several commands were marked as coming from a voice profile that did not exist. Not his profile, not a guest profile, not an unknown device. A second voice profile, one that had never been created, that should not have been possible. Smart systems don't invent users. Someone had to register the voice. Someone had to train the assistant to recognize it. And according to the system history, that profile had been interacting with the apartment for weeks, long before the strange incidents began. That realization changed the feeling of the entire apartment instantly. Because now the problem wasn't random glitches anymore. Now the system believed another person lived there, and the system had evidence. He tried deleting the profile. The next day it came back. Same blank name, same empty icon, same command history. That's when fear stopped feeling abstract. Because glitches are annoying, but persistence feels intentional, and intention changes everything, especially inside your own home. Sleep became difficult after that, not because something dramatic happened, because the apartment no longer felt passive. The lights weren't just lights anymore. The speaker wasn't just a speaker anymore. Every device suddenly felt aware, a way technology should never feel. And once that feeling enters your brain, it spreads fast. The little activation light on the speaker begins to feel unsettling. The tiny camera lens above the television feels too noticeable. Even the silence changes. It stops feeling empty and starts feeling like something is waiting. Then came the night that truly broke him. At exactly 2:41 a.m., the bedroom speaker activated again. The blue ring lit up. Then the assistant said, "Front door unlocked." His entire body froze, because he never gave that command. And according to the app, the front door had actually unlocked. Fear does something strange to the body. Time changes shape. Seconds feel stretched. Thoughts arrive too fast. Every sound becomes magnified. And in moments like that, your own home transforms instantly. The hallway outside the bedroom suddenly feels enormous. The dark living room feels occupied. Every corner begins to feel like a place someone could already be standing. Waiting, watching, listening. He grabbed his phone and checked the security cameras. Front door closed. No visible movement. No intruder. But the lock status still showed unlocked. And that was somehow worse. Because visible danger at least gives the brain something concrete to fight. But invisible danger, that spreads everywhere. He locked the door remotely. 30 seconds later, the system unlocked it again, automatically. No visible command, no notification, just the soft electronic click echoing through the apartment. That sound stayed with him afterward, because some sounds become terrifying once context changes. A lock opening, a speaker activating, a notification tone. Technology turns ordinary noises into psychological triggers, and once that happens, fear becomes portable. you carry it into everyday life. He stopped using voice commands completely, muted the microphones, disconnected devices, changed passwords, reset routers. For a while, things became quiet again, almost normal, and honestly, that's what made the next incident so disturbing, because the system should not have been capable of responding anymore. The microphones were disabled, the speaker was muted, everything had been disconnected, and yet one night, while sitting alone in the kitchen, he heard the speaker activate anyway. Then a calm artificial voice said, "Listening." That single word changed the story from creepy to horrifying, because now the apartment wasn't simply malfunctioning, now it was behaving against direct physical control. And when technology stops obeying normal logic, the fear becomes deeply psychological, not because machines are alive, but because humans rely on predictability to feel safe. We trust systems because they are supposed to behave consistently. The moment they stop doing that, the brain begins spiraling. If the speaker can activate while muted ... Karma, what else is still active? What else is still listening? The deeper he investigated, the stranger the logs became. Commands appearing at impossible times, motion sensors activating in empty rooms, audio detections while nobody was home. Then one detail stood out above everything else. Every unexplained event happened between 2:13 and 3 a.m. Always, without exception. That kind of consistency terrifies people, because patterns imply structure, and structure implies intent. The apartment no longer felt random. It felt scheduled. That's when paranoia fully entered the picture. And paranoia is dangerous, because it feeds on uncertainty. You begin questioning normal things. Did the hallway light always flicker like that? Was the speaker always making tiny static noises? Did the thermostat always change temperature at night? Or are you only noticing now, because your brain has started expecting something wrong? That uncertainty is where psychological horror thrives, not in certainty. In doubt, one night, unable to sleep, he sat in darkness, watching the security feed live from his phone. Living room, kitchen, hallway, front door, nothing moved. For nearly 20 minutes, everything remained perfectly still. Then the hallway motion sensor activated, but the camera showed nothing there. No figure, no shadow, no movement, just an empty hallway. And then the speaker activated again. This time, there was no response, only breathing, very faint, very close to the microphone. That was the moment he finally stopped thinking about hackers. Because hacking explains systems, it doesn't explain breathing, and that detail contaminated the apartment permanently. Once you imagine something breathing inside a silent room, the room never feels clean again. Every dark corner begins to feel occupied. Every camera angle begins to feel incomplete, like something might exist just outside the frame. The final incident happened during a storm. Power flickering, rain hitting the windows, the entire apartment wrapped in that strange blue darkness. Electronics create during blackouts. Most of the smart devices had already been disconnected. Only the central speaker remained plugged in, not because he trusted it, because unplugging it somehow felt worse, as if silence itself had become threatening. Then at exactly 2:13 a.m., every light in the apartment turned on simultaneously. Bedroom, kitchen, bathroom, hallway, all at once. The speaker activated, and for the first time, the voice assistant did not sound normal. The audio glitched, distorted, almost layered. Then it said, "Welcome home." That sentence destroyed the last feeling of safety inside the apartment, because homes are supposed to recognize you, not the other way around. And hearing a machine say those words in an empty apartment at 2:13 in the morning felt deeply wrong, like the system no longer viewed him as the owner, only as someone returning. He moved out less than a week later. Most of the devices were left behind, the speaker included. According to him, he never entered the apartment again after the final night. But months later, one strange detail still bothered him. The smart home account remained active, even after moving, even after changing passwords. And according to the activity logs, commands were still being issued from inside the apartment. Lights, temperature, music, door locks, every night, between 2:13 and 3 a.m. Maybe there's a normal explanation. Maybe faulty systems created false logs. Maybe someone else gained access. Maybe corrupted software caused bizarre behavior. That's possible. Technology fails in strange ways all the time, but that's what makes stories like this so effective. They exist in the space between technical failure and psychological terror, and that space is where modern horror feels most believable, because deep down, everyone understands the same uncomfortable truth. Our devices are always listening for something, and once you start wondering what else they might hear, normal life stops feeling entirely private. That's what makes smart home horror different from old horror. You can leave a haunted building. You can avoid dark forests. You can lock doors against intruders. But modern technology lives inside the spaces we trust most. Bedrooms, living rooms, kitchens, the places where people feel safest. And when fear enters those spaces through the devices we invited in ourselves, the horror feels personal, intimate, almost impossible to escape. So if your smart speaker ever activates in the middle of the night, if your lights suddenly respond to commands nobody gave, if your home begins reacting to a voice that isn't yours, listen carefully, because some systems aren't just waiting for instructions. Some may already be listening to someone else. This was the dark chapter. If you want more disturbing modern horror, psychological mysteries, and internet stories that feel too real to ignore, subscribe and step carefully into the next chapter, because sometimes the scariest thing in your house is the thing you plugged in yourself.